Agencies Drinking Beers brought to you by Proposify, software that helps you deliver beautiful proposals in the cloud and close more deals.
Little business dinner on Saturday.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I went to the demo night at Dalhousie University and had some dinner prior to that with some industry folks. Some people from Las Vegas were in town. And actually, someone that was there mentioned that they saw us from on the docket from 2011, from when you did the pitch there originally, the original one.
I was on a docket?
Yes.
Man, I didn't know that I was on a docket.
Yeah, you were on a docket.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so 2011, when you did that famous pitch, when we realized that we had something.
A famous pitch to 20 people.
Yeah, and it was called Pitch Perfect, and it was held together with duct tape, wasn't it?
And bubble gum.
Yeah, bubble gum.
Don't forget the bubble gum. Yeah, it was long before the product we have today, but humble beginnings.
Humble pie.
And you're going to Toronto.
Taking the Rickster.
Is it this week?
Yeah, I leave Wednesday.
Jeez.
Yep.
Just world traveler.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be good to bring Ricky. We're going to be going to Toronto to see FreshBooks and do some demoing for some of their clients in Hamilton. And then the next morning, we're invited to breakfast at FreshBooks and to take a tour of their office and hang out with those boys.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's the holiday season's upon us. We haven't planned our Christmas party yet.
Yeah.
Should we invite all the listeners to the Christmas
party?
Yeah,
come on, fly on in. Yep. Halifax Airport.
A little hard to get to sometimes.
Yes.
A lot of stopovers, but we'll have to schedule that.
Yeah, you have to bring a seaplane up here to Nova Scotia to get here.
A gyrocopter. Yeah. My favorite kind of copter.
Gyro.
Cool. Okay, well, I don't have anything interesting to talk about this week.
Well, let's just get into this. This is one of my favorites.
This is a good interview. It's a little bit longer, too, so it's probably good we don't chew up too much time with the intro.
We met this guy in Arizona 2 weeks ago at the Infusionsoft meeting we went to. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, good speaker. Good voice. Good voice for radio.
Yeah, and I don't know what he was using. We should have asked him because there were no issues from the production side either.
Unlike the week before. We shan't speak of that.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's get into the interview with Mark Jamnik. We're here talking with Mark Jamnik. He's an award-winning sales strategist with over 15 years business experience. He's the author of Smarter Selling, 5 Steps to Sales Success, and has done a whole bunch of other cool things. We're happy to have you on the show, Mark. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to be on here. Thank you so much for having me.
That's great. Well, let's jump into it. First, just let the listeners know a little bit about your background and some of the stuff you've done and how you've gotten to this point in your career.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Yeah. So as you had mentioned and alluded to it, I have over 15 years in the business sales experience. And I as soon as I graduated college, I actually did an internship at a local cable station where I was basically representing a bunch of different cable networks. And after that, after I did the internship, they said, hey, we'd love to have you on as a salesperson here after you graduate. So going into my senior year of college, I had a job ready and waiting for me, which was fantastic. So as soon as I finished up my senior year in college while studying marketing, I hopped over into representing and started working at Comcast Spotlight, which is basically we were representing about 50 or 60 different cable networks. And so I was out there talking to local businesses and also advertising agencies, to see how I could present those different stations to those ad agencies. Well, after 2 years of working in there and growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I'm very, very proud of, I moved over to the sunny, warm climate of Arizona, and that was in 2002. And I shifted over to another corporate company called Cox Media. And I shifted over and I started selling 80 different cable networks. And from that point, I basically then was representing a whole lot more national advertising agencies in Boston, New York, and some in Florida, Seattle, LA, Chicago. And so it gave me a chance to really understand and embrace and talk with and develop that relationship, which is really the media world that I've come to know, like, and trust over the years. And so in 2011, I shifted out of that because after winning all the different awards and traveling and doing a lot of different things within that, I said I'm gonna jump out and try this on my own and see how I could possibly impact a little different approach, because living in corporate America, it's definitely has its benefits of security, and there's also a whole lot of other things that were calling me from the entrepreneurial side. From going way back in my days, I started out as a Jolly Rancher salesman in 7th grade, and then basically I started selling my lawn care services after that. So it was like ever since I was a very, very young boy, I started out loving the entrepreneurial piece. So I was going back to my roots there and trying to figure out how I can morph, the entrepreneurial spirit with what I was really doing in those years in corporate America. And that's what I basically started my company around, and started going out there and focusing in on offering up services to a lot of different business owners that need many different hats, that as you're looking at that. So I basically have kind of morphed my entrepreneurial spirit with all the different opportunities that I was representing when I was in corporate America.
That's awesome. So you kind of have just sales and entrepreneurship are just in your blood. It sounds like you're a natural. You didn't go to a particular school to learn it, which I think so many. It's the case with a lot of entrepreneurs. So how do you help, I guess, entrepreneurs now? And you're a sales expert. So I guess what is it that you teach other entrepreneurs? Yeah,
so basically the thing that I've really worked into now, what I'm working on now, is offering a concierge service to entrepreneurs. And so within that concierge service, there's a specific aspect of that where there's certain entrepreneurs might need help on the sales side. Well, I've actually created a sales system. I look at things as a system. And when we met at PartnerCon, and we also had a chance to listen to Michael Gerber speak. And one of the things that Michael Gerber spoke about was the power of a system. You could only grow a business to a point of at the speed of the system. And so because of all my background and because of all my experience in sales, and because of my interest and desire to really systemize things, I've combined those two things. So not only am I the connector and really the salesperson, but I also love creating systems. So I help entrepreneurs with sales systems and create sales systems so that there's a process so things can scale and grow beyond them. So it's just not them going out there and selling over and over and over again. We can create a sales system that can be duplicated across the staff and those that are inside the company and even outside the company.
I think that's really valuable, especially for a lot of people who run smaller web design agencies and marketing agencies, because I think, speaking for myself as a designer, when I got into running my own business, I didn't have that experience with sales. And there was a lot of stuff that you talk about, which we'll get into on, the 5 steps to sales success, like knowing your ideal customer and being able to tell your story, the essence of your company in a sentence, and all this kind of stuff that sounds maybe kind of obvious, but I didn't know any of it. And so I think there's a lot of people like that. So what would you suggest for somebody, maybe they run a web design company or a marketing company, and they don't consider themselves a salesperson first, but it's just sales is something, of course, obviously they need to grow their business. What kind of steps or what kind of systems do you think could help them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and this is great, and this is all included in the book here, and we could talk about that as a link at the end here so that everyone can download this book. But it's one of those pieces that we all hear that content is king, and there's the main thing that I think a lot of people just kind of overlook, because it is almost so obvious, but it's also overlooked in a lot of places, and it's that messaging is the precursor to sales. Before you start going out there and start talking about all the different things that you could do, you got to understand, what is that message? What is that simplified message? I call it the essence in a sentence, your own story. And once you get that idea down, then everything can start to build from that. So the biggest thing is, we've all heard the first sale needs to start with you, and so when you are sold yourself, you can then go out and offer your services and sell your services, or like I always say, it's not selling, it's serving others. you could serve other people because you're so clear on what it is that you're selling. I think so many different people are lost in what it is that they're really doing. I talk to countless, I've talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs over the last 4.5 years. And that epitome of the question of what do you do drives a silent fear in everyone. Like, oh crap, what do I say now?
Okay, Mark, hold on. I got to interrupt. So how did I do, by the way? Be brutally honest when you asked me that question.
Did great, actually. From there wasn't anything in particular that stood out to me whenever we started talking. I'm like, okay. Even the name of your company says a lot, right? So when we started talking, that really connected, and then it just gave me an opportunity to learn a whole lot more. So I will say that there wasn't a big question mark over my head.
Okay.
I can't exactly remember exactly what you said, but
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
But we've gotten better at it, but in the past, I know with our agency, it was a lot harder because we weren't as specific or focused. So whenever I would get that fear, that's exactly what you're talking about. When somebody would say, "So what do you do? What is Headspace?" I'm like, "Well, we're we do web design and we do some marketing." Like, it's just so generic because we didn't, at least I didn't have a really specific, I help these types of people do this. So, how would you help somebody like me? I know there's more out there who are like that. Somebody who's really struggling to find their essence in a sentence, how would you help them uncover it?
Yeah, so that's fantastic. And one of the things that I love doing, and this is one of my most favorite things that I love doing, because of the power in it. And so the first thing that we really do is we do a whiteboarding session, and I ask some very pointed questions to get you thinking about what are all of the things that you say. And so, for the people that are listening at home, one of the big things that they could be doing is to meet up with their team and really almost just do a whiteboarding session of all the things that you're currently saying that you're doing, and list them all down. And when you think that you've said it all, keep on going, because I really believe, and this is kind of a core fundamental of it, and this is why it takes a day for us to really come up with it. I call it the road trip day. But in that day, what we'll do is we'll work down and list out all the different things. And the further down the list you go, the deeper and deeper you really get into why your company exists. I don't know if you've heard some people talk about, well, why do you want to do that? And then once you answer that, then ask why again, and then why again, and then why again. It's an iteration of that. But when you get down to the final 7, there's a big, big difference as to why you started at the beginning and the why that you started at the end, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll go through this whole thing, and I really believe, because I've been, and just like a lot of people that I'm sure are on this call, studied a lot of psychology. I love psychology. And one of the things that I've realized as a result of working with a lot of different companies over the years is that there's this conscious mind and there's the unconscious mind. Obviously, we've all heard about that. And there's things that we say off the top of our head that we just constantly go back and back and back and back. And then there's also this other divide to get to the unconscious mind. And I believe that, the further and further you ask those questions, the deeper and deeper you get beyond that unconscious mind. So, when you get to the point where you're like, yeah, I think that's enough, that's the line of your conscious mind to your unconscious mind. Now, I will say this to all the listeners out there. I am not a trained psychologist. I don't have a doctorate in psychology. It's just a matter of me sharing and learning through a lot of the different people that I've seen. But as I continue to ask that question, well, what else and what else and what else, we get through and we break through that divide of the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, and we get down to the real root of what is really happening underneath it all, and the real why, which really helps get that essence in a sentence.
Yeah, I love what you're saying too about psychology, because it's, I'm quite interested in it myself. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are. I think you have to be if you're in sales and marketing, because really, none of us have doctorates or PhDs or anything like that in psychology, but there's so much great research out there on the internet just to kind of absorb and learn, and it really applies, whether it's, the psychology of color on a marketing site, or the psychology of, how buyers perceive their intent, all that stuff. There's so much good stuff out there. So it sounds like you've done a lot of research in that area.
Oh yeah. Studying things from, Jack Canfield, the Success Principles, to Tony Robbins, and I mean, going to different events out there. I mean, I'm just constantly, supporting that and going through that myself to kind of learn more about that, and then being able to apply that and help others, help the entrepreneurs out there, because as an entrepreneur, it's hard. We all know that, and we've heard, that it takes, anywhere from that 3 to 5 year to really break that, and really break through, and sometimes even a little longer than that. And it's really hard. So my whole thing when I started this, there were several people that were asking me, well, what is it that I really want to do? And the biggest thing that I wrote down, even on this journal, and I was actually moving that journal around this weekend, was that entrepreneurs think differently. And my whole thing was, because of the way that I approach the world and life, I have to be able to talk to people that also approach the world, think differently like that too. So, so really what was a natural fit for me was entrepreneurs, and then more specifically, advertising agencies, because of the fact that that was my background, and that's just what I've known throughout my life, so that's really the whole tie-in behind all of the things about psychology and really helping and serving those entrepreneurs that could really, really benefit.
So, just kind of looking at this great book that you've written and going through it, I know step 4, I know we kind of jumped around, so if you want to back up, let me know. But one thing that kind of stood out was that after you you've gone through, you've asked those why questions. Why are we doing this? Who are we serving? You can now explain the essence of your company in a sentence. The step 4, it was about asking questions. So if we're talking about psychology and understanding how people think and behave, you recommend that people ask the right questions in order to land a sale. Can you kind of talk through that a little bit and what you mean and how to come up with those questions?
Yeah, well, because I've been studying sales for so long, there's all these different cliches that I'm sure I'll probably be adding throughout this talk here. But the first thing that I'll say is telling is not selling. And we've all maybe heard that. And when you're trying to sell something, it's very difficult when you're telling someone. The real big thing is, how questions can lead to answers to land more sales. Right? So as you start asking more and more questions, you have a chance to really uncover and help even the person that you're looking to serve, how they can even understand what it is that they're really looking to do. And I saw this a few years ago when Chet Holmes spoke. Chet Holmes was founder of Business Breakthroughs International. He passed away a couple years ago. But he talked about this pyramid. And he talked about it as a pyramid of, most people ask questions at the top of the pyramid. It's like, oh, hey, are you, what's your biggest challenge or something like that, right? And then from there, it's like, oh, well, here's how my product can help that. Here's how my product can help that, blah, 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 blah. And then you start going into all the different benefits. And then if you picture a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid is where all of the objections occur because he didn't ask a lot of questions at the beginning. So you'll have a lot of objections at the end, like, oh, I got to think about it, or this, that, or the other. At the end, all of those objections really happen because the right questions weren't asked. So the big thing that I talk about is inverting that pyramid to where all the questions happen at the beginning. And I'll tell you this, one of my very first clients was an ad agency, surprisingly. But one of the things that even happened after the couple meetings with him was he said, well, when can we get started? There wasn't a question of, how, well, boy, I don't know. I have to think about it. Blah, all those objections that happened, but it was because of all the questions that I asked leading up to it that really helped to land that sale. So if you don't like dealing with objections, one of the big things that I really do encourage is ask more and more of those questions. And, I give a couple examples, and I'll even give an example here while I'm sharing this. Those questions don't have to be so pointed at them. It's a sense of like you have to research their website for hours. It's really coming at it from a curiosity perspective. And when they start talking about something, ask them, well, what is it about that? And then almost, again, kind of that same why question. Well, tell me more about that. And one of the best questions you could ask is, tell me more. Because people want to talk.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people love to talk about themselves. And, we used to call that extinguishing the fire before it starts, in a sense, right? You ask enough questions and understand enough and answer enough questions so the fire doesn't start, and escalate to the point where they're saying no.
Kevin's really good at that, actually. I think from what I've seen and probably done myself a million times is that you're so excited to talk about your business and how you can help them that you end up kind of scaring them away because, you can tell when somebody's just like nodding along, waiting for their chance to kind of jump in and talk about them, talk about themselves. So, I love that approach of like just keep asking questions. If they tell you about something, say, tell me more. Because, then they're like, this person's really interested in me. They're not just looking for an excuse to pitch me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this builds on the whole thing, the story selling, the essence in a sentence. You need to be able to elicit some sort of interaction so that they know what they're going to be able, like what's the context that they're listening under. And that's really the whole idea. You don't have to make this whole elaborate talk. That's why I talk about it as an essence in a sentence, because you want to be able to make sure that someone understands what you do. And then once you get that out of the way, then they can understand how you might be able to serve them, right? And then they're able to start to share with you information that's going to be valuable that you can offer them that can be supportive of that. So, again, it's just kind of building on that piece of what we were just talking about, the essence in a sentence.
Mm. Yeah. So you've asked the questions. You've hopefully gotten the prospect eating out of your hand and asking. You want them asking, when can we get started? It almost seems like if you have to ask, hey, what do you think, or hey, when do you want to get started? It sort of comes off, I don't know, as a little bit desperate and maybe turns them off. I don't know what you think of that.
So, like, as far as asking them, because what I was kind of alluding to a little earlier is they were asking, when you ask them enough of the questions, then they start to elicit they're asking you the question, when can we get started, or what are the next steps?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to your point, if you're saying, so, when can we get started? If you're asking them that, it could be a little presumptuous to start.
Yeah.
Am I hearing you correctly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Basically, Kyle's saying like the close, right? I mean, that's where we're at now.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When so just kind of moving on a little bit to the idea of metrics. So you talk in step 1 is about creating these business objectives and what are your goals, and then step 5, I'm jumping all over the place, is measuring the metrics. So what do you recommend, I guess, on both of those fronts? Is how do you come up with really, measurable objectives, and then how do you go about measuring them on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, perfect. Well, let's start off, and we could zoom back to step 1 here. We started in step 3, but, as you were talking about the sales piece, I'm like, I totally believe in the whole idea of, from the sales perspective, starting off with that essence in a sentence. But backing up even before that, creating business objectives. The agency that I was talking about, that was one of my very first clients, he was talking about, and I heard Donnie Deutsch speak about this on The Big Idea. This was probably 8 years ago. And he had Mike Rowe on from Dirty Jobs. And I'm going to get back to the whole business objectives here in a second. But one of the things that Donnie Deutsch said, and again, as everyone here listening is that agency owner, I'm sure they could all relate to this. But he said, I come into my office, and Donnie was saying this to Mike. He's like, I come into my office. He's like, there's papers on my desk. And there's things that, there's my computer on my desk. And that's pretty much, I work all day. I leave at the end of the day. And there's papers on my desk and there's a computer on my desk. And then I walk away, right? And I come back and I do it all over again. He's like, when you're going out there and you're doing some of these dirty jobs, he's like, you arrive at a job site. He's like, and there's no ditch. You create a ditch. And then at the end of the day, you walk away and there's a ditch, so at least you could see it. And bringing that all back, it's like, how many times do you feel like at the end of the day, you've worked all day and got nothing done, even though you've worked very hard all day? Mm-hmm. So the whole idea of having these business objectives is to be able to take your quarterly goal, break them into monthly themes, weekly focus, and daily action, so that at the end of every day, you know that you have accomplished a specific task. And there's a question that I ask in the book, and I've talked to clients, and I've asked them to even send this to me as we first get started, to send them over, what's the one thing you're going to do today? And it's the one thing. Now, there's going to be plenty of things that you're going to have to do, but what's that one task that you absolutely is essential to moving business forward? And so starting off and understanding what your business objective is will help you understand, we're all getting at the end of the year here, right? So everyone's starting to set up their 2016 plan. So taking that business objective and turning that into quarterly goals, monthly themes, weekly focus, and daily action will give them the opportunity to start to see what they really do need to focus on. And also when detours come up, because look, we know that we're not opposed to having something, we come in and we're going to want to do this one thing and then 25 other things happen that you have to attend to, but it at least gives you a chance to come back. And when those detours happen, you could come back onto the path and know that that's the right step that you got to go into. So that's really the whole idea of being able to systematize it in such a way. And there's a dashboard that you could download through my site and start to use. And think of it as just a simple worksheet so that you would know what you need to do on which day. And, bringing it all back to, the Mike Rowe, Donnie Deutsch conversation on The Big Idea years ago on CNBC, it was, feeling like you've accomplished something at the end of the day.
It reminds me of like when you're doing, say, an investor pitch. Everybody likes to, when you start trying to forecast or predict, we're going to do X revenue in year 1, 2, 3. I mean, everybody knows it's kind of bullshit. Like anybody can pick a number out of thin air and say, "Yep, this is my goal for the next 3 years. Is I want to like increase, I want to 10x my growth and all that kind of stuff." But what usually, in my experience, investors are a lot more interested in is how are you going to spend the money? Like what actual activities are you going to use to get there? And that is a lot easier. It's a lot easier to predict what you're going to do versus what the results are going to be at the end. And that's just kind of what it reminds me of a little bit is, goals are great and it's good to have numbers of here's where I want to be next year. But more importantly is what am I actually going to do to move the needle and keep pushing it ahead?
Absolutely. Yes, I couldn't agree more. One of the funny phrases that I say is the most dangerous thing out there is an entrepreneur with a calculator. Because, you can put in numbers all day long and those numbers, it's like, all that I have to do is 10x this and 10x that or whatever. And but it's a matter of how do you get it back to what steps do you need to take? And I always talk about, I don't care what the goal is. Late last year, I basically started working with a client. They wanted to grow 3 million this year. I'm like, I don't care what the number is. Let's just figure out what do we need to do in order to get there. Because that's where you might see that, you don't want to raise. And actually, when we first started, it was 3 million. It started to go down from there after we started realizing and after you started seeing all the things that was going to have to happen in order for that to take place. So again, it starts to give, and this buoys in right into the step 5, which is measuring your magic metrics. We started getting clear on what metrics were we going to measure. Do you need to figure out, after you get so many opt-ins, we know what the conversion rates are generally, right? From sending out an email to open rates, to them clicking a link, to them opting in to do something, to them arriving up on a webinar, and them actually showing up and signing up for something, right? There's all those conversion ratios. So what's the conversion ratios, or what are the metrics that need to take place that are important to measure the magic metrics? I call them the magic metrics that really align back up to the business objectives.
And it's a lot easier, like when you talk about how many people come to a site, or how many opt in, how many view a webinar. It's really easy, to kind of get those conversion rates. I know we find it a lot easier with our business now that a lot of it is, somewhat automated to a degree where we know roughly what steps a prospect needs to take to become a customer. When you run a small consulting agency, I always found that to be a lot harder because so many agency owners don't have a system for generating leads. When I talk to them, lead generation is often the biggest pain point they have because they rely on referrals, like word of mouth. A past client sent somebody my way, but they don't actually have a system to generate leads. What can they do?
Well, one of the things that I know you and I were even talking about at the PartnerCon is, where there's certain needs, there's all sorts of different skill sets and talents out there. And one of the things that I like to do is I'll vet different companies and teams because I'm out there talking with a lot of different entrepreneurs. And so one of the things that they could do is they could talk with me, and I'd love to understand a little bit more about their customer, what they've done, and how I might be able to create and generate some leads for them, again, where it's appropriate. Where there's a good fit. I talked to a company that really systemizes social media the other day, and I'm like, I want to talk with you because I love your philosophy. It really fits right in line with mine. And there's certain things I'm not the expert on social media. I'm not going to claim that I am, and that's not what I do. Right. So if I can generate, and I forgot to send some leads that way, that's one easy way. Right. So that's something that people can go on my site and schedule a call with me. The other thing would be just to start to, break down break down a past or a client that you just have acquired, and take a look back on the emails that you sent them, the things that you've sent to them. And then you could obviously start to break that into and put that into Proposify at a certain point. But there's a certain stage and there's a certain rhythm that starts to happen. And the biggest thing that I always talk about is, systematizing something is really difficult when you're trying to create it. But looking backwards, it's a whole lot easier. So what I would say always is there's certain things that you'll go through and you'll do. And take a look back on your last 1, 2, 3 clients maybe that you've landed to see what consistencies were there. How did you get them? And how do you break back? How do you break down the steps of how you got there? So that's really a great starting point, is to reverse engineer what you've already done, because what you've already done has worked. You have a client.
That is good.
That's really good. It should be like the headline, because it's, the thought of like systematizing your sales is really kind of overwhelming. You're just like, how do you do it?
But working back,
but if
makes such sense.
Yeah, figure out. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Kevin and I are nodding.
We've just come up with the headline then, apparently.
Yes. Because, so I think maybe why it resonates so much with us is because we're actually working on, we have a lot of smaller companies using Proposify, a few enterprise companies, but we're really looking to build up kind of the enterprise side over the next few months, building the features that they need. And so one thing that, Kevin and I are working on is how do we actually build a sales system for enterprise customers. A lot of it we just don't know yet. We're just learning, we're experimenting. And eventually, one day we may have a team of salespeople that go out and try to get these enterprise customers. And it's one thing to figure out your own system. I know when we ran the agency, we did most of the sales. So it, you want to sell your company someday, it becomes a lot harder to do that if the founders are the only people who know how to sell. But if creating that system and being able to train people and have them do your sales for you is a much bigger challenge to get over. I don't know if you've had experience with that or any insights on that.
Yeah. So funny enough, I was exhibiting at Icon earlier in 2015, and when I was talking about the overall process, there was a woman that walked up to me and she said, I am all about systems. And she said, I have never heard of someone talking about sales as a system. So she said, I want to talk to you a little further. So we had some follow-up meetings. She's actually creating a course, and she asked me to put together a program for that course for her, because she said, it's your process, right? But it's like, I would love to be able to offer this. And so one of the things that I did was I broke down basically these 5 steps to sales success. I put that into a program, and it's aligned exactly with this book. So what those steps are is, being able to really dig in and put it into, it's a simplified Google Doc, right? But it gives you a chance to start to see where are the holes in your story, in your sales process. And basically being able to plug those things in gives you that confidence, because what we're really talking about at the end of the day is this is just simply a confidence builder. When you go to someone, and sales is a transference of emotion. And when you're still trying to figure out how do you do something, and you're like, well, I hope that's going to work, right? We've all had those meetings. Like, I remember the first deal that I closed, actually, I'm sorry. The deal that I was talking about earlier about the agency, that was like the second deal or something. The first deal that I had closed, I didn't even have the program designed yet. I was like, well, this is what it could be. And they're like, okay, we'll take it. And then I said, crap, I have to come up with this thing now. But, it was awesome because I had a chance. I knew what I wanted it to look like. It was just, I needed someone to be able to invest in it for the first time. And so, since then I've made a lot of iterations on that. But the thing about it is, I would say the big thing is to really follow this and start to block out and really begin to even create your own, like I said, a Google Doc or whatever format you use. I also use Trello. Trello is a great way to start to front stage, backstage some things. That's a strategic coach term. But they'll talk about, what needs to happen on the front stage for the customer to experience it, and then what needs to happen on the backstage for all of that front stage information to happen.
Can you explain that a little bit more? So do you mean on the front stage, is that things that are client facing, and the backstage is like internal stuff that you need to do to fulfill it?
Exactly right. Okay. Yes. So the example that was used is, Frank Sinatra doesn't move his own piano. Now, that was a reference from many, many years ago, right? But he basically showed up, and he played the piano. Now, everything that needed to take place, there was logistics companies that needed to get the piano there. There were sound companies, the graphics companies to make sure that all of the people could get to the venue. I mean, all of those things that need to take place for someone to be able to enjoy a concert by Frank Sinatra, those are all the backstage. And then when Frank showed up on stage, that's front stage.
Gotcha. Yeah, but he needed all those people behind the scenes to entertain people.
Yep. Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
So you used Trello for that.
So when I'm working on initial things, as far as some different systems, I'll start to utilize Trello to start to organize things. So I have a huge project board. And so this is one of the things that I'll start to do now that I have my what I call the dashboard, the daily dashboard, and that's really what we're talking about in step one, is creating those business objectives. We plug it into the daily dashboard, and then I know which things I need to be doing on which days and which overall objectives I'm really looking to accomplish. Then from there, I have different projects. So I have a big project board on Trello where it's just like my big capture. It's like, okay, I need to work on this program. I need to work on that program. I'm doing this now. I'm doing that. And it just gives me a chance to start to plug those things in. When that project is big enough, then I'll start to process, systemize it and put it over into its own process and say, okay, well, on my road trip day, I have it all processed out. This is what needs to happen. These are the links that I need to do. These are the things that I need to include. These are the updates that I need to make. And so all of that is listed in Trello. And Trello is a free tool. It's great. I mean, I know that there's Asana. There's all sorts of different ones. For me and my brain, Trello works. So I'm not. I'm endorsing Trello, but I know there's plenty of others out there. And for certain people, it doesn't make sense. For certain people, it does. And for me, it makes a ton of sense. So Trello, Trello. You use Trello as well?
Yeah, we do. We use it for our just general task lists, for our editorial calendar, for blog posts and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. We've got a board for our product roadmap and which features we're working on, because we don't, obviously the kind of company we are, we don't really do projects in that sense, like client projects, but it's a very flexible tool, which is what I love about it.
Yeah. And so, from there, then you could, with all the different things that you could put in there, from checklists and reading a book called Scaling Up. I don't know if you've heard of Scaling Up.
I haven't, no.
But one of the things that he talks about in there is the power of checklists. And this could be he uses an example of doctor's offices and how they actually, the propensity of patients and their recovery time, I believe it was either their recovery time or actually a decrease in mortality actually happened because this one particular doctor started following a checklist for their surgery. Mm-hmm. And it just talked about how when you're talking about systemizing things, you need to have a checklist. And within Trello, you could create those checklists of knowing which things need to take place and who needs to be doing what. So it could be a great start. And again, it's a very simple, easily modified tool. But again, it could be modified for whatever and however you might need. And if there's other project management tools out there, I'm sure that you could look at that for client work, because I know that there's a whole lot more complexity in that. But along the same lines, that's another great place and a great way to start systemizing things.
That's awesome. Hugely valuable information, Mark. I know we learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners would as well. Where can people go to, I guess, find out more about you and take advantage of some of the great stuff you've got?
Yeah, sounds good. So if they want to go to Incremize, INCREMIZE.com, there is a it'll be redirected basically to Mark Jamnik, and you go in there, and I would encourage everyone to download the ebook. That's the Smarter Selling ebook. And so they could find that again as they go to that site. And are we going to include some links, or could we include some?
Yeah,
links?
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. We'll have links in the show notes.
Yeah, so when they go into when they get to the landing page, they could go to Discover Smarter Selling ebook, and it's under Discover. So it's Discover Smarter Selling ebook, and what I'll do is I'll send you over that link, or you could grab that link and include that in there, and you put in their name and email, and they'll be able to get that book and go through that. And it's really one of those things. There's also a questionnaire at the end of the book, and it gives them a chance to really self-diagnose where they're at. And after they go through that, they could send that over to me, and then we could do a quick assessment for them and to see where there might be some great fits. So I'd be happy to do that as a gift for your listeners. And I really appreciate you having me on the show today. I've really enjoyed this and love talking about this. So I'm happy to share.
That's awesome, Mark. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm so glad we met in Arizona. We'll have to we'll be back down there in March, so we'll have to hook up.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely I will see you at Icon. I picked up my ticket already, so I will definitely be back, and I'll see you there.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All right.
You
Thanks,
have a great
guys.
Rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. There we go.
Good guy.
Good guy. Great guy.
Knows his shit.
Yeah.
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 Actually, a lot of stuff that you've done over the past. I know you're always talking about, really listening, asking a lot of questions. It's good sales 101, but it's not obvious to everybody.
No, and his is more up to date. I mean, I got into sales back in the 80s. I learned most of my stuff.
Back when you wore checkered sports coats?
Yes, with patches on the elbows.
I rewatched Glenn Ross the other day.
Oh, yeah. I want to do
just
that
for that
too.
scene with Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
So mean.
I know. I'm going to put that in here,
Yeah?
that clip.
It's pretty offensive.
It's okay.
We might get a few emails and calls. A lot of F-bombs dropped in that clip.
Yeah, we might get in trouble.
Yeah, we got to watch ourselves. Okay, well, hopefully you enjoyed that great interview with Mark and pulled a few little nuggets of wisdom from it. Until next week, stay fit and have fun.
Later.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only. You think I'm fucking with you? I am not fucking with you.